Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. It's John Pollock, and we have all of today's news, and we're going to break it down with John Rambine and Robin Black. Today we've got some Bellator fights to announce for their upcoming events, and a former Strikeforce champion reunites with Scott Coker. Bellator announced on Tuesday that they have signed lightweight Josh Thompson after his contract came to an end with the UFC after his last fight. Thompson will be reunited with Scott Coker, who promoted Thompson's fights while with Strikeforce. After Strikeforce was dissolved, Thompson would go to the UFC, defeating Nate Diaz and then losing his next 3 fights, the last of which was to Tony Ferguson last month in San Diego. MMAfighting.com reports that Marcus Galvão will make the first defense of his Bellator Bantamweight Championship against Eduardo Dantas in October. Galvão won the title this past March by submitting Joe Warren at Bellator 135. Dantas is the former champion at 135 pounds and is coming off a unanimous decision win over Mike Richman. A date has yet to be announced for the proposed October event. An event that is official for Bellator is Bellator 143, and that will take place September 25th in Hidalgo, Texas, as Joe Warren and LC Davis will meet in a bantamweight fight alongside middleweights Kendall Grove and Joey Beltran. Warren recently dropped the 135-pound title to Marcus Galvão and will look to rebound in this fight. Davis is coming off a split decision victory over Hideo Tokoro from March in one of the best fights of 2015. I am here with John Rambine and Robin Black. What is going on?
Nothing's going on except for Josh Thompson going to Bellator.
Wow, segue, man. Well, let's chat about Josh Thompson, the latest guy that's represented by Dwayne Zinkin, moving over to Bellator, reuniting with Scott Coker. His contract came up, and this seems to be just yet another move of guys from that particular management team that sees it much better working under Scott Coker than in Zuffa.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a trend, I think, not just from the guys that represent AKA and Zinkin, but a lot of top-level guys. I think because of this whole Reebok deal, and I know Dana White in the UFC says, just be patient, things are going to work itself out. We promise the athletes will be satisfied when this thing ends, but a lot of the fighters, especially the guys that are in their 30s, they need to make the cheddar right now. And if they're at the end of their contract, because Scott Coker is so well respected in this industry, these guys are going to go over, they're going to get a lot of fights, and they're going to make some money.
You know that lawsuit that everybody's trying to sue the UFC for being a monopoly?
Yeah.
All of these things are helping that lawsuit fail.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, well, we can't retain any guys. Josh Thompson left. Josh Koscheck left. Phil Davis, one of our top guys, he left. So this is all helping them with that lawsuit for sure. And it's real. There's no doubt that there is really a competitor now, a competitor where other guys can go to, they can make a living, but it's still not the big place. When you go there under the assumption that, like Josh Thompson, I might have 4 fights left. I might have 5 if they give me lower level guys.
He turns 37 next month, so certainly it's only a handful of fights he's probably going to have left.
Yeah, and that's the same with Koscheck. As much as we love Koscheck, that's the same with Kimbo Slice. Yep. That's the same with Shamrock. Phil Davis is the only exception, and although I love Phil Davis, I'm a huge fan of his, he's not a star. He just isn't. So until a big star comes along that moves over, this doesn't really matter that much. And we were trying to put our finger on who that would be. Even a Jose Aldo, that would help the Brazilian market, but no, it would have to be somebody big.
Or a bunch of small, kind of mid-sized guys. Guys like Robbie Lawler, guys of that.
Not that he's a mid-sized guy, but he's not the biggest
He's not the biggest draw. Yeah. Right now, obviously, Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey, if one of those, especially Ronda Rousey, she has a relationship.
Ronda Rousey's going to Bellator.
She's not going anywhere, but I'm saying if she was to make the move over there, I think that would be the sign for everybody else to say, okay, if a star of this stature is willing to make the move, we can tread into new waters.
Or if George St. Pierre or Anderson Silva or both, but they're all under contract. And the UFC, all this is going to do, it's going to be very positive. It's going to be very positive because the UFC now will be motivated for their better fighters, their bigger stars, and people who have some value to go to them when they have 2 fights left or 3 fights left and say, here's a new offer. And it's like, oh, wow, that's a really good offer because you've got to keep those guys now. So I think the overall positive for this, hey, great, Josh Thompson, good for you, man. And Koscheck, you've earned it. Go make some money. But for the big picture of the game, it's going to raise salaries for people.
It feels that if you're Bellator, you have to just look at this from a common sense approach. The bulk of the top fighters in the world that are in the primes of their career, they are going to be bound by the UFC. We're not going to get a foothold on the top fighters, at least not a gigantic amount of them. So we're looking at fighters that are maybe in the twilight of their careers but still have a name attached to them. And the other area is aggressively scouting who are going to be those next fighters. And hopefully these names on top can introduce us to the young ones, and then suddenly we can create at least enough of these top fighters that we can build around. That has to be your philosophy of how you're going to build a promotion that runs every single month and does not have access to all of the elite level fighters.
And that's exactly what it is, and Coker knows that. So he's using the names that he has right now, the Kendall Groves and the Joey Beltrans, to attract the hardcore fight fans. But at the same time, he's looking at the Alliance team in San Diego, and he's looking at Team Quest in Temecula, California, and of course American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose. He's based in California. He has a great relationship with all of those camps. He'll ask Eric Del Fierro, who's your next 145-pound guy? Del Fierro will say, oh, this guy's 3-0. Watch for this guy.
And Bellator,
that's right.
Instead of 8-8, let's give him 15-15.
That to me was always one of the strongest points under the Bjorn regime, was going to Russia and finding these great fighters that we now just have to find a way to promote. Look at Michael Page. That's a guy, he's on television. If you can promote that guy to the masses, what an interesting style of fighter that you're not going to see anywhere else.
Yeah. But good quality fighters, really skilled guys who have that sizzle, your Pat Currens and your Michael Chandlers, man. It would be great if you could find a Michael Chandler or two in every division, but you can't necessarily, but you have to try.
Michael Chandler, Josh Thompson. I think we'd all love to see that.
All right, that will conclude our Bellator chat. You know, Nevada's got a hearing coming up later this week, so it's going to be another favorite topic to discuss of whatever news comes out of that one. But we have more Fight News Now Extra coming up.